Hey everybody, this is David Wolinsky back with another interview from the audio archives of NoDon'tDie.com. This time I'm bringing you part 2 of my conversation with Lauren Tozer-Kilts, a ex-Nintendo gameplay counselor. This conversation took place on August 13th, 2015. If you'd like to read along or just see a full transcript of our conversation, please check the link below in the description, and another link down below in the description is to my Patreon. If you like the work that I'm doing and want to support it, which means a lot and goes a long way.
That going back to the Venn diagram of that overlap of stupid and angry, of people who just don't want to be helped. And so no matter what you do for them, it's never going to be enough. And it's those calls that some people find most destroying.
So you said you would get calls, emails, letters. How would you characterize the typical tone of each? Would one tend to be more angry? Would one tend to be more stupid? What's the frequency of you running into those percentages per medium?
Well,
if you can even remember.
Most people on the gameplay counseling side, you rarely got anger, straight out anger. You'd get frustration, you'd get whatever. On the consumer service side of things, they're not calling you unless there's a problem. Okay? So I would have to, when I talk about the 10% of angry people, I'm talking about the people who, even though you solved their problem, they're still harboring that anger that they started the phone call with because they shouldn't have ever had to have dealt with it. And then there's the stupid angry people who felt that they should never have had to have dealt with the issue, and just are not willing to listen to anything that you want to give them to solve their problem. So I would have to say that let's talk about the more or less reasonable 60% chunk of humanity, somewhere in the middle. They're going to start off, most of them at least upset, sometimes outright angry. But, that larger 60% chunk of humanity, once you find out their problem, once you have an active resolution for their problem, they go away happy. And that's mostly what I take away from it is, I solve people's problems.
Yeah.
And that was a good feeling.
So I guess to fast forward to today, I mean, it's not in a vacuum at all, but I don't know, why are people so angry about video games? I guess in any stretch,
Okay, well,
not to ask too huge a question, but
depends upon the perspective of the question. There is a larger video game playing audience out there these days.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a sense that the major game makers are only making games for a segment of that audience. And so that's where people, growing up, it's like there are games out there for young girls and young boys. And there are a lot of young girls who like their pony games, their Barbie games, and their whatever, and then they get to a certain age, and games that cater to them disappear. And they might find some happiness in playing the Mario games or the Zelda games, but because of the way a lot of games are written, they're really aimed at the late teen, early 20 male audience. And so I think there's part of that disconnect there. I know that some larger companies are thinking about that. And then there's this whole social construct that this is a much, much bigger topic that I can't even really begin to do justice to, where, because a segment of the populace is asking for games that are more tailored to them, there's another segment of the populace thinks that means games tailored for their tastes will disappear because they're being tailored for another audience, where I don't think that would really ever be the case. I just think I think that one audience has been catered to so long that any change in that level of being catered to seems like they're having to lose something. And I don't think that's really truly the case, but I can see how a segment of the population might perceive it as such.
Yeah, and I talked to... go ahead.
And as I said, I'm very, very trying to very diplomatically step around the late nastiness, if you will.
Well, I mean, you don't have to. I understand why you do. I mean, it's I've talked about it with other people, but if to stay more diplomatic, or at least just steadier footing to describe things in ways that probably, well, basically just like, I've been asked this question by someone who's been like a producer on the Silent Hill series.
Mm-hmm.
He's over at Way Forward now, and this is a person who has, I hate repeating this because I don't like to keep putting that out there, but like in the eyes of the gaming audience, somehow he has ruined the Silent. You talk about, getting calls. You've ruined my kid's Christmas.
You've ruined my Silent Hill.
Exactly. The internet blames this man for somehow doing things beyond even like what his job is or was. But he asked me, like, is it just games where, like, the older people want to see things be different, and I keep using that term, the kids, but the younger people want to see things stay the same? Is it really just games that are like that?
This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because if we step out and look at media as a whole has had the luxury of becoming more diverse over time because, well, films and television and whatever have been around a lot longer than video games. Mm-hmm. And so video games have had to grow up probably a lot more quickly than other types of media out there. Mm-hmm. So because there was a perception about what the audience of video games should be, kind of informed how it evolved, and now that we're kind of in the process of growing up in, video games have to grow up, because for so many years, the manufacturers, the AAA game titles, unintentionally created this idea, and in society as a whole, that video gamers are males between a certain age, late teens, early 20s, and that's who we need to cater to, because that's the market.
But that wasn't always the market.
Hmm?
That was not always the market.
Yeah, I realize that.
No, I know. I'm saying it to remind myself.
Yeah. But
Because I feel like a lot of the people you hear talk about that don't realize that.
and I think that the shift of family-oriented gaming, and that's not even the right word, but it was sometime in the 90s, late 90s, after 1995, when somehow, and I don't know how, I can't speak to how or why it happened, but sometime after 1995, that's when this perception really started to evolve and take root and really become the focus. And not for everybody, because Nintendo has done, well, not a great job, but a better job of catering to a wider range of players.
I talked to someone the other day who said, like, the reason things are the way they are today is because of Nintendo's marketing. In other words, like, it's not potent or powerful enough to offset, the greater toxicity that's out there. But I understand the pragmatic reasons, like why the industry doesn't seem to be wanting to lock horns with it. But I'm curious to hear from your perspective. Oh, what? I was just gonna say, like, I wonder from your perspective, like, what do you think even like the industry or the media could be doing to combat some of the, entitlement or the toxicity that, like, is not just unique to games, but that exists within that space?
I don't necessarily have any original thoughts on that matter.
Yeah.
There, a long time ago, being a year and a half ago, a friend of mine, Jeff Vogel, who's an independent game developer. I don't know if you know the name or not.
I've interviewed him. Yeah.
Okay.
Up in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same guy. Yeah.
Like
I literally just ran an interview with him 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's a friend of mine. For non-video game related reasons.
Sure.
Wrote some really, really good articles about this subject. And whenever I want to, and which is rarely, because, well, my circle of friends are, and this is how circle of friends really evolve, is they kind of all agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's true. But just wrote some really, really good stuff on the subject on his blog. And so whenever I've had to, someone's asked me about it, I always refer them back to him, because he just very clear-headed about why it happened, how it happened, and maybe some ways out of it.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I actually don't mind when someone brings him up or brings up. Maybe I should drop a link in, because I would agree.
Yeah. Now, here's the fascinating thing about Jeff, and this probably shouldn't go in the transcript.
It's okay.
But
I mean, I also interviewed his daughter as well.
Which one, Miranda or Cordelia?
Cordelia.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked a lot about games. Anyway, but continue. So,
is that when you're face to face with Jeff, he really likes to stir shit up. He will say the most outrageous things for just the purpose of seeing your reaction. But he leaves a lot of that. He still has a good sense of humor in his blog, but he's not nearly the asshole as he is face to face. I mean, he's a wonderful and kind gentleman, and very generous. But if he thinks you're a friend of his, he's going to give you so much shit it's not funny. He's one of those kind of people.
Yeah, no, I can relate, and that's sort of the way I try to carry myself. And the interview I did with him was provocative, to say the least, and it was received as such online. So no, it's not at all a bother to be like, you know what, just listen to Jeff, because I would agree. Well, I have just a few more questions here for you. So I know you were not involved with Nintendo Power, but I was trying to remember, and we did talk about this a little bit before with the grannies, but just be curious to hear, like, what sort of comparison or contrast you would make against, like, you know, the profiles that used to run of players in the magazine in the 90s versus, say, like, you know, popular streamers today. Like, as far as just, like, the way they seem to be presented.
That is going to be almost an impossible question for me to ask, because I have no idea who popular streamers are.
Yeah.
Okay, I just don't interact with that segment at all. And it seems strange to me that there is an audience for people watching other people play video games. I just can't. I guess this is my age showing. I have no idea what that's about.
It's all right. Yeah.
And so, and also having don't really remember the profiles. That was just so long ago.
Yeah.
That it literally is impossible for me to do any kind of comparison contrast, because I don't remember what it was like, what the profiles were like back then, and I have nothing to compare them to now. So
no worries.
I'm sorry, I cannot help you.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, you know, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Well, I'll just leave you with this last question, which is broad, as you probably noticed. A lot of my questions are, but what do you think video games have accomplished?
Well, I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
What I think they have accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to digress slightly.
That's fine.
Because being something of a history buff, I'm very fascinated about these little cycles of history, where when any new media really comes about, and this happened for film, it happened for radio, it happened for comic books, I'm sure it even happened for opera, but there is a segment of the populace that looks at any new entertainment as bad, because it's different and is somehow going to corrupt our youth. Oh, rock and roll was certainly like that. Just to toss out another one. And then as the youth grow up with this art form, and this does hold, again, true with radio, with television, with film, with comic books. Although, because of the comics code, it took a lot longer for comic books, but that's completely outside of the scope of this conversation.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, this is just another form of entertainment. And so was it Gene Siskel who said that video games will never be art because they can never move, you know, there can never be an emotional connection. They can't move you. And that's just because he had this view of 3 moving lights on a screen, 2 on each end, one going up and down, tossing this other bit of light between them. Of course that's not going to move you, but that's the genesis. And if you look at early film, they were equally as shallow as Palm was back in the day. And there are certainly now games out there. Lord of the Rings, we'll go back to that. Lord of the Rings Online, the storylines sometimes have been very, very powerful and have moved myself and my wife to tears because the story was that engaging and that involved. There we were. So video games will not accomplish anything more than film or television or radio or any other kind of art form. Okay? But video games are certainly capable of accomplishing everything that film and radio and whatever have done. So it's powerful and can be powerful. But because it's limited to, and this is the limitation of entertainment, is it's limited to its impact on our internal spheres. If it moves us to then act in an external sphere, by going out and helping, either through charity or through other actions, then the media, no matter what it is, has done a good thing. And video games are certainly capable of that.
Yeah.
Just like film and radio are. But it's not. But it's not. I'm losing my words here.
No, it's okay. It's a big question.
Yeah.
And it's intentionally last.
Yeah. It's capable of. The art form is capable of moving us, like any other entertainment out there. So, what other impact it may have is largely up to us, the consumers of the media.